Hello, I'm Warren Martin, and this is Face Today. And all this week we've been talking about the idea of criticism and how criticism can be the leaven that makes creative thought more because it causes you to rethink things, it causes you to think about things in a new way, and can actually take your creative thought to the next level as you answer those criticisms. However, there is a thin line between criticism and control. When people are criticizing you and bringing out points that maybe you haven't thought about, maybe things that you need to consider, that's one thing. But when people begin to use their words and their critical comments to actually control you. I was a part of a ministry that one of the biggest things that you always heard talked about was that you couldn't do this or you couldn't do that. Why? Because it might become a stumbling block for weaker Christians. It might become a stumbling block for other people. If they see you going to a PG-13 movie, that might be a stumbling block to them. Well, if they see you going to a PG movie, that might be a stumbling block to them. Well, if they see you going to a theater, they don't know which movie you're going in, so that might be a stumbling block. So you can't go to any movies because you can't be a stumbling block to others. Well, what's interesting is where that comes from is it comes from 1 Corinthians chapter 8 and verse 9. And it says, "But beware, lest somehow this freedom of yours become a stumbling block to those who are weak." Now then, that's important. It's important that we are conscious and conscientious that what we do does affect other people, and that what we do can become a stumbling block for others. What that verse does not say, and what that verse specifically is not speaking to, is it is not speaking to Christians saying, hey, you should be watching what other Christians are doing so you can point out where they might be a stumbling block to someone else. In fact, throughout the Bible, over and over and over again, Paul says, I don't let anyone judge me. Who are you to judge me? In Romans chapter 14, verse 4, he says that we are not to judge another man's servant. And it actually says this, who are you to judge another man's servant? To his own master he stands or falls. Indeed, he will be made to stand, for God is able to make him stand. At no point in our life are we to let other people judge our lives. This verse that comes out of Corinthians is not speaking in such a way to where your pastor or your someone else in your church or someone else that's a Christian has the right to come to you and say, hey, you shouldn't do that because it might become a stumbling block to someone else. This verse is written exclusively to you and exclusively to me. Only I should determine what might become a stumbling block to someone else. It is a verse written to me that I should be cautious about what I'm doing and consider what I'm doing and how it affects other people. It is not a verse for me to say, I need to be looking at how other Christians are living their life and pointing out where they might be a stumbling block to someone else. Because all that does is it allows me, through a legalistic approach, to have control over someone else's life. And when I listen to that type of, quote, criticism, I'm allowing someone else, through legalistic means, to have control over my life. We worship a living Lord who is big enough to tell us what we should and should not do. He is big enough to live through our lives in such a way that He can point out where we are being stumbling blocks to other people. We are to consider our own actions, and we are not to take that type of criticism. That type of criticism, it is not the leaven that leads to greater creative thought. In fact, it's the shackles that tie us down and bind us to legalism and force us into a life that is really controlled by other people. You and I were called to live a different way. Yes, we are to consider our actions and how they affect other people. But we are to clearly discern between what is criticism and what is really just legalistic critiques that are meant to control our lives. Because when we're able to tell the difference and we're able to listen to the criticism and dismiss the other, well, that is how we're enabled to face today.